Egypt had one of the largest and most complex pantheons of gods of any civilization in the ancient world. Over the course of Egyptian history, hundreds of gods and goddesses were worshipped. The characteristics of individual gods could be hard to pin down. Most had a principal association and form, but these could change over time as gods rose and fell in importance and evolved in ways that corresponded to developments in Egyptian society. In this video, we will get to know the 12 most important gods and goddesses of ancient Egypt. Osiris, god of the dead. Osiris, one of Egypt's most important deities, was god of the underworld. He also symbolized death, resurrection, and the cycle of Nile floods that Egypt relied on for agricultural fertility. According to the myth, Osiris was a king of Egypt who was murdered and dismembered by his brother Seth. His wife, Isis, reassembled his body and resurrected him, allowing them to conceive a son, the god Horus. He was represented as a mummified king, wearing wrappings that left only the green skin of his hands and face exposed. Isis, goddess of life and magic. The origins of Isis are obscure. Unlike many gods, she can't be tied to a specific town, and there are no certain mentions of her in the earliest Egyptian literature. Over time, she grew in importance, though, eventually becoming the most important goddess in the pantheon. As the devoted wife who resurrected Osiris after his murder and raised their son, Horus, Isis embodied the traditional Egyptian virtues of a wife and mother. As the wife of the god of the underworld, Isis was also one of the main deities concerned with rites for the dead. Along with her sister Nephthys, Isis acted as a divine mourner, and her maternal care was often depicted as extending to the dead in the underworld. Isis was one of the last of the ancient Egyptian gods to still be worshipped. In the Greco-Roman period, she was identified with the Greek goddess Aphrodite, and her cult spread as far west as Great Britain and as far east as Afghanistan. It is believed that depictions of Isis with the infant Horus influenced Christian imagery of Mary with the infant Jesus. Horus, god of the sky. Depicted as a falcon or as a man with a falcon's head, Horus was a sky god associated with war and hunting. He was also the embodiment of the divine kingship, and in some eras, the reigning king was considered to be a manifestation of Horus. According to the Osiris myth, Horus was the son of Isis, and Osiris magically conceived after the murder of Osiris by his brother Seth. Horus was raised to avenge his father's murder. One tradition holds that Horus lost his left eye fighting with Seth, but his eye was magically healed by the god Thoth. Because the right and left eyes of Horus were associated, respectively, with the sun and the moon, the loss and restoration of Horus's left eye gave a mythical explanation for the phases of the moon. Seth, the god of chaos. Seth was the god of chaos, violence, deserts, and storms. In the Osiris myth, he is the murderer of Osiris. In some versions of the myth, he tricks Osiris into laying down in a coffin and then seals it shut. Seth's appearance poses a problem for Egyptologists. He is often depicted as an animal or as a human with the head of an animal, but they can't figure out what animal he's supposed to be. He usually has a long snout and long ears that are squared at the tips. In his fully animal form, he has a thin dog-like body and a straight tail with a tuft on the end. Many scholars now believe that no such animal ever existed and that the Seth animal is some sort of mythical composite. Ptah, god of art and creation. Ptah was the head of a triad of gods worshipped at Memphis. The other two members of the triad were Ptah's wife, the lion-headed goddess Sekhmet, and the god Nefertem, who may have been the couple's son. Ptah's original association seems to have been with craftsmen and builders. The 4th dynasty architect Imhotep was deified after his death as a son of Ptah. Ra the Sun. God one of several deities associated with the sun, the god Ra was usually represented with a human body and the head of a hawk. It was believed that he sailed across the sky in a boat each day and then made a passage through the underworld each night, during which he would have to defeat the snake god Apopis in order to rise again. Ra's cult was centered in Heliopolis, now a suburb of Cairo. Over time, Ra came to be syncretized with other sun deities, especially Aman. Hathor, goddess of love and joy. The goddess Hathor was usually depicted as a cow, as a woman with the head of a cow, or as a woman with cow's ears. Hathor embodied motherhood and fertility, and it was believed that she protected women in childbirth. She also had an important funerary aspect, being known as the Lady of the West. Tombs were generally built on the west bank of the Nile. In some traditions, she would welcome the setting sun every night. Living people hoped to be welcomed into the afterlife in the same way. Anubis, god of the dead and the underworld. Anubis was concerned with funerary practices and the care of the dead. He was usually represented as a jackal or as a man with the head of a jackal. The association of jackals with death and funerals likely arose because Egyptians would have observed jackals scavenging around cemeteries. In the Old Kingdom, c. 2575-2130 BCE, before Osiris rose to prominence as the lord of the underworld, Anubis was considered the principal god of the dead. According to the Osiris myth, Anubis embalmed and wrapped the body of the murdered king, becoming the patron god for embalmers. Thoth, god of wisdom. Thoth, the god of writing and wisdom, could be depicted in the form of a baboon or a sacred ibis, or as a man with the head of an ibis. He was believed to have invented language and the hieroglyphic script, and to serve as a scribe and advisor for the gods. As the god of wisdom, Thoth was said to possess knowledge of magic and secrets unavailable to the other gods. In underworld scenes showing the judgment undergone by the deceased after their deaths, Thoth is depicted as weighing the hearts of the deceased and reporting the verdict to Osiris, the god of the dead. Bastet, the cat goddess. In her earliest forms, the cat goddess Bastet was represented as a woman with the head of a lion, or a wild cat. She took the less ferocious form of a domestic cat in the 1st millennium BCE. In later periods, she was often represented as a regal-looking seated cat, sometimes wearing rings in her ears or nose. In the Ptolemaic period, she came to be associated with the Greek goddess Artemis, the divine hunter and goddess of the moon. Aman, the creator god, before rising to national importance in the New Kingdom, c. 1539-1292 BCE, the god Aman was worshipped locally in the southern city of Thebes. Aman was a god of the air, and the name probably means the hidden one. He was usually represented as a man wearing a crown with 2 vertical plumes. His animal symbols were the ram and the goose. After the rulers of Thebes rebelled against a dynasty of foreign rulers known as the Hyksos and re-established native Egyptian rule throughout Egypt, Aman received credit for their victory. In a form merged with the sun god Re, he became the most powerful deity in Egypt, a position he retained for most of the New Kingdom. Today, the massive temple complex devoted to Amun-Re at Karnak is one of the most visited monuments in Egypt. Sobek, the crocodile god. Sobek is the crocodile god of the Nile River, the patron god of the military, and the protector of pharaohs. He is typically depicted with a crocodile head and human body, an ankh, and a hem-hem crown with a uraeus, feathers, and a sun disk. Sobek was the crocodile god of the Nile River. The people of Egypt both feared and respected the power of crocodiles, so Sobek soon came to be seen as a patron of the military and the protector of pharaohs. He was also a god that would restore souls damaged in battle or death to their previous physical health, including their sight and their senses. In some ancient Egyptian texts, he was a creator god, and he was believed to have created the earth. While he was creating, his sweat ran down his brow and back in a flowing stream, which later became the Nile River. The gods and goddesses of ancient Egypt demonstrate a civilization deeply rooted in belief and cultural systems. These deities were symbols that shaped the lives of people and provided them guidance. As symbolic representations of the sun, death, fertility, and justice, they held vital significance for the Egyptian populace. The mythological tales and symbolism of these gods and goddesses are still frequently encountered in art, literature, and popular culture today. The rich heritage of ancient Egypt is regarded as one of the most captivating and influential periods in human history. Which Egyptian god story interests you the most? Don't forget to share in the comments. See you in the next video.